Hello, this is Adrian Jones from Keller Williams, and we are doing a podcast special today, and it's a first-time buyer special, and I'm glad to say I've got a very special first-time buyer with me. Alex, we were sat here a couple of weeks ago.
We were.
You were interviewing me about my business and what we do, and we touched on the fact that you said to me when we first met, you said, wouldn't mind having a chat with you because I'm a first-time buyer, and I said, well, let's come back. So we're here.
So here we are, Adrian.
I've got a whole load of bits of general advice and thoughts. I thought if we talk about you, and then I'll divert for people in other circumstances where, you know, the advice might be different. We'll try and keep this as general as we can, but by having a bit of a focus on you, it'll, you know, make it a bit more real rather than it just being a very flat, you know, first-time buyer guideline.
Sounds good to me.
So where are you in your first-time purchase journey?
Very much at the beginning. I don't have my mortgage in principle in place because I know that's kind of the place to start, is when you have that in place, and then you can start putting offers forward when you do find the property that you like. But my situation is very much at home with mummy and daddy. You know, my younger brother in the Navy, sister's just come back from university. So I was still very much, although I was the older sibling, I was still at home with mum and dad. I'm single, by myself, so I just don't really know where to begin.
Okay, so you love them, they love you, but you don't necessarily want to stay under the same roof forever. Yeah, and that's
27 years old in January. It's like, come on, I'm nearly 30. I kind of want to go.
I haven't checked this stat, but the average age is something like 35. Scarily, first time buyer.
I do joke with my parents that when I put them into a retirement home, I'm going to join them just to annoy them even further.
I do know a father and daughter who actually have moved into a retirement home together. Daughter moved in late 50s, and then her father lost their mother, his wife, and he said, where better to live because she loves it. She bought particularly young there, and he bought particularly old.
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened. So you're dead right. The first thing, it's a bit like anything. I know you don't need to talk about your bike, but I know you've just bought a bike.
I have.
And you probably had a budget in mind. When you go and buy a pair of jeans at the weekend, you probably think, am I going to spend 100 quid? Am I going to spend 20 quid? Getting your mortgage in principle is very important because it's basically telling you how much money have I got to spend. And a lot of people make two mistakes. They guess what they think they can afford, or they go on an online calculator, put in, even if it's accurate, and sometimes it's not the most accurate salary or earnings that they have, work out what they think they can buy, chuck in the bit of deposit they've got, and they go and look at that value. My advice is go and get a mortgage in principle. I would personally say do it through a broker. You pay a broker usually a fee, but you get access to what they call the whole market, or that broker should have access to a lot of the market rather than just going to Barclays, NatWest or whoever. So that would be my advice. And be honest and transparent about what you earn and how you earn it. Because although they're not doing a detailed test on you there, when that comes, and you're a little bit economical with the truth about how you get paid and how regularly, and is it really a bonus? Is it really guaranteed over time? It'll just come to bite you on the backside.
I did go to a mortgage advisor probably last year, now that I think of it. And again, you know, I've never had my mortgage in principle. It's something I've never, you know, that is the step that I need to take when I get really serious about it. When I know for certain that this is what I want to do, I found somewhere I need to get that in place. But I did go to a mortgage advisor and just to kind of, you know, for them to ask the questions to me, just so I could get a gauge of and an understanding of what I could look for. So I wasn't looking at something that was, you know, £40,000 out of my price range, it then didn't get my hopes up because I didn't then see a flat that I fell, you know, head over heels in love with. But then because I'd gone to the mortgage advisor, I wasn't looking at properties that I knew that I would never be able to afford at that moment in time.
Yeah.
So
it's a perfectly sensible way to do it. The other question, not for an answer here, but what deposit do I have available? And that will be savings that you have, savings that somebody might have offered to you. It is not, you know, the bank of mum and dad, grandparents at your age. You know, you sometimes get gifted from grandparents. People who have property, have equity, think, why am I sat here with equity in my property if I can help somebody else in the family? So establish that quite early on. It could make the difference between getting a mortgage and not. or buying the house or flat that really works for you or not. So
it is different. That is definitely the conversation that me and my parents have had. You know, like my mum and dad. You know, they know that my younger brother probably will never really move back home full time unless something does go horribly wrong for him. But it's not looking likely that it will. My sister just come back, like I said, just come back from university. So she is, you know, back at home until she can find herself somewhere to live or, you know, flat, whatever it is she's looking for. But my parents, you know, they are close to retirement. They are looking for their retirement plan. And they have said that they will look into, you know, the equity and trying to, if they can then support me with giving me potentially, you know, doubling what I've already got to one side, or potentially giving me half, just to give me that extra oomph and that extra push to, you know, what I might need.
that opens up another podcast special, which we will do, which is the downsizer one, which is, you know, potentially the position your parents are in. And what I would say then with the broker thing, call 2 or 3 and pick the one that you think knows their stuff. That's obviously a bit of a given that you're going to engage somebody who you think actually knows what they're talking about, but somebody who responded reasonably quickly to you. And I'm not suggesting they call you back 5 minutes after, because they're busy people, but they know what they're doing. They have come back to you pretty quickly, and you just think that you're going to get on with them. And when they've come back to you and said, Alex, this is what I think you can borrow today, this is your MIP. The great thing about that relationship with the broker is that when anything changes in the marketplace or changes with your own circumstances, your own earnings, your own deposit, they can immediately update you. And it's on what you can borrow, but also how much that's going to cost you, because both are equally important. Right now you're thinking, how much can I borrow? How much can I borrow? But then that needs to translate into, this is what my outgoings every month are going to be. So get your finances in place. I mentioned to you last time, a lot of people ignore getting legally ready. As a buyer, as opposed to an owner, you don't have to do very much. I'm going to go through all your property details and pass those to the solicitor. It's a very simple thing of, I need to find one, get a quote, so I know how much this is going to cost me. The advantage of that is, in my position as the agent, when I've got a first-time buyer who's got a mortgage in principle, gives me his broker's details and says, oh, and by the way, I've already selected my solicitor. It's not about who that solicitor is. It's just that preparation immediately puts you at the top of a pile of others.
Yeah.
Because being brutal about first-time buyers, you've got everything from dreamers to must-haves, got to do it now. And you're not right at the end of that extreme because you've not got a time pressure.
No, I am very flexible in terms of my time scale and what I'm looking at. You know, I'm not looking to jump the gun and do it right now, you know, here and now. You know, I probably would say I am a dreamer because I want to move out. But
I'm never here to kill your dreams.
Yeah, well, you know, and
I've never known anybody to have a mortgage dream though, as opposed to
No.
being on stage, which I know is your
my ultimate dream would be
your dream.
You know, would to be, you know, have my name in lights. You know, that I'm now in the next, because we were talking about it, I'm in the next Christopher Nolan film. You know, that would be bloody hell. That would be the dream. You know, sort of having a house, because then I can, if I'm in that film, I can then afford a house. You know,
Brilliant idea. So your flexibility on timing there is a good thing, because what you don't necessarily want is a ticking clock of the end of a tenancy, or a desire like, you know, I want to have bought my house before I get married, before we have a baby or another child. So it is to your advantage, because at the bottom of the ladder as a first-time buyer, if you're, yes, I want to buy your flat, we've agreed a price, I've got a mortgage in principle, but to that owner who then needs to go and find their next move, you're the perfect buyer, because you're not saying, I've got to be in by December or February. You're saying, I don't want to wait forever, but I'm at home, I can save a bit more deposit, I can go and work out what curtains I want, but I'll give you some time to go and find it.
Yeah.
That puts you in a really, really good
and
position.
I think that would probably relieve the pressure from the people that I'm buying off of, you know, because they're not going to feel pressured that they've got to be out by a certain point. You know, and like you said, I won't say, right, I'm going to give you the next 5 years to decide what you want to do, because that's unrealistic. You know, I would say to people, look, I'm in no rush. I'll give you 6 months or, you know, 8 months, whatever, but I'm not going to really push it and say, right, you've got 2 years to find yourself another property, because I would like to be by Christmas if I'm starting at the beginning of the year, for example.
We talked about what you can borrow and the cost of that. The other thing to remember is there are other costs involved in buying. So there's the big one of the house price. Most of that's going to be covered by the mortgage company, but there will be fees for your broker. There will be fees for your solicitor.
Yeah.
Depending on what level you buy at, probably not you personally, you may attract stamp duty, but that again is a calculation you'll need to make. You'll have removal costs, possibly. It might be a mate with a van, but that mate with a van might still need...
With my full-time job away from podcasting, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve that I can pull, because I work for a storage company. So, I know a couple of removal companies that might help me out for free.
Brilliant. Buildings insurance, furniture, depending on the state of the property you buy, you might need to buy some white goods.
IKEA, here I come.
Exactly. IKEA, eBay, everything in between.
Yeah.
But you just need to take that into account, because you will make a sacrifice when you buy. You'll end up not buying that £200 pair of jeans, that next Star Wars figurine. I know more about you than you remember.
See, Star Wars figurine for sure, jeans not so much.
But you will, you'll pare back the next holiday. It's what everybody does at every level when they buy, or they should do. But you also don't want to be there sat thinking, I cannot do anything in my life, even though I got the mortgage and I've moved in. I wouldn't mind a fridge. It's quite useful to have one. So you just need to take those bits into account. What I'm not going to do is go into a load more detail about the specifics of what is a mortgage and what's a loan to value. If you Google things, there's a whole load of information on the internet about everything. I'm not his biggest fan, but money saving expert Martin Lewis, there is a very good guide that he does about buying a home and first time buyer. So if you just look at that, the good thing about his is most of the guides come from a mortgage company or a broker, and they're always steering you maybe to something else. His is straight down the line of just, this is how it works.
Yeah.
And there's no point me sat here going through that. Time frame wise, you could find the flat in a day. It might take you a year. How long will it take to buy it? Again, will depend on whether it's what they call chain free, empty, people have moved out, ready to move, or whether you're at the beginning of a long chain of families moving, and that could take you 6 months, 8 months, 9 months legally together. That will depend on the chain and what you buy. Choosing the property. I'm not here to tell you what you're going to go and want to buy, but it's important to really think, what do I need as opposed to what do I desire? And I don't need to probe specifically about that, but have you had thoughts on what it is you really need to buy and where?
Yeah, it would, I mean, like you just said, what I would want versus what I need. I need just your standard 1-bedroom flat is all I need, and that's probably what I will ever need. I'm not a green thumb. I don't want a garden. I never want a garden. Even when I'm 65 years old, I probably then move to a ground floor flat, so I'm not having to then trip and fall down the stairs while I'm carrying my Zimmer frame. But I don't want a garden. I'll have a balcony so I can have a few potted plants and stuff.
Window box.
Yeah, I'm not one to have a garden.
Bonsai?
A Japanese peace lily. But then my dream would be to have potentially a 2-3 bedroom flat again. Probably one of the bedrooms would definitely be the spare bedroom, but then the other one, I'm sure you can guess, would be the man cave.
We all desire one of those. That actually should be high up on the list. In fact, should come in before other considerations.
Absolutely.
And you touched on something there by saying, and then hopefully a 2 or 3 bedroom flat. That could be a house. But I think it's important to remember this is a first time buyer or first time purchase. And for most people, it won't be their last purchase. And the second purchase will often come within a few years of that because of life changes, which are usually, relationship or earnings. And both of those will trigger the desire to buy something that's just a little bit better. It doesn't necessarily need to be bigger. It might be a 1-bedroom flat in a better place.
It's probably just the location. Like at the moment, I'm looking, Camberley, Farnborough, but come October, my location for work changes. So I might look at Guildford, just so then I don't have to rely on public transport to get to and from work, and I've got good working legs, so I can walk, or in my case, I can now ride. But so I think even if I found somewhere in Camberley, that wouldn't still be my forever.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the point about that being a first purchase and not the last purchase, or not even a long-term one, you will make a compromise on your purchase. I've got a great anecdote for property compromise purchase. I used to work for a multimillionaire who had several properties, but he had 3 principal residences. He had one in the Boltons in Knightsbridge. At the time was worth £30 million or more. He had a country estate outside Newbury. Don't actually know what it was worth, but it had more bedrooms than you'd ever need. And he had a place in the south of France. He, one evening when we were talking about compromise on the stuff, he reeled off like that 5 things on all 3 properties that were compromised for him as a multimillionaire with 3 properties. They were very much multimillionaires' issues. They were helipads, turntables for his car in the front driveway. But it just proved the point that even he was eaten up by these compromises. My point for yourself and anybody else, remember how long you're going to be living here, probably. And these things can change a bit, but it is my first one. What do I need it for now? And also, my strong advice would be buy it for yourself. Quite a lot of people look for a 2-bedroom flat because they buy it for their parents. When they come and stay, their mate, when they stay over. What mate isn't going to be happy to sleep on a sofa bed? And if it's your parents, you sleep on the sofa bed and you give them your bedroom.
I just gestured to Jack behind the camera because when we do things and then I've got the next day off, it'd be a case of I'll pull out the bed and you can crash in the living room.
Exactly.
Which I'm happy with. Like, I don't care. Like, I've grown up going on camping holidays. Like, I don't need another bedroom all to myself when I'm just staying at a mate's house. So.
And what that means is you'll end up wasting less time searching for the property that you will never get. And then 6 months later, 9 months later, either give up or then rationalise what you're going to buy and then think, why didn't I do this 6, 9 months ago? And so it's a problem. I've seen it with younger friends when I was younger who, kept looking. And I said, have you found anywhere yet? No, still can't. And I thought, they're earning perfectly well. They know where they want to be and what they want. And they just were looking at something that was just a bit too out of their reach.
Yeah, I think if I were to look for a 2-bedroom, flat, for example, that the second bedroom wouldn't be a bedroom. It just wouldn't.
Yeah.
There'd probably be a sofa. There wouldn't be a sofa in there, but there'd be a table and a chair in there because I would turn it into my geek office. I would have my computer in there.
An office from home.
It would be my office. It wouldn't be a second bedroom. Even when I had people to come and stay, they'll be like, "Oh, we'll just crash in here." I'm like, "You can't sleep in there. It's not a bedroom."
Well, that office room in a 1-bedroom flat then means your lounge remains, a space that's enjoyable rather than.
That's kind of what it was as well. Is that I would have the second bedroom as a room for all of my geek memorabilia because then it wouldn't clutter up the rest of the flat. And it's kept behind a closed door.
On viewings, not necessarily first time round, but if you see something, I really like this, and then thought, oh, blimey, I've found something I actually might buy here. This is a pretty scary moment. Take a trusted friend. Could be a family member.
I did that with Jack.
Somebody who's pretty impartial. They know you well enough to know what you like and dislike, but they'll give it a non-emotional touch. And that might actually encourage you to buy it because you've got a buyer withdrawal, even though you haven't bought it yet. You've got that, I think I've found it. Somebody like Jack might turn around and say, this is absolutely perfect for you. Why aren't you buying it? Or he might turn around and say, wrong area. Why are you buying this?
We went to visit one in Camberley, just round the corner from Jack's ex-partner, where his children reside. And, I took Jack along with me just to see a second opinion because I was very much in love with it. And I just wanted a second opinion that I trust. Jack is a very good friend of mine. And I think I must have been blinded by what I saw because you picked up on things that I hadn't seen. You saw the boiler in the corner of the living room and things. Do you remember? You picked up on certain things, and and then Jack was asking the estate agent himself as well, going, "Oh, what about this? What about this?" And it was stuff that I hadn't thought of. Because again, I'm still very not naive, but I'm still very new to it all. I've never lived alone, not even in a rental property. I think the closest I've ever lived to alone is when my parents go on holiday. And I have to go out, and I've got to budget for food and things, and it's not right. I can't just have Domino's, KFC, McDonald's, repeat. And it gives me a sense of what it would be like.
Because this is a heart and head purchase, and very few people buy wholly with their head. The first trigger to want to buy a property is usually something about the property that stirs the emotion in. And it may sound like an odd thing, and again, from personal experience, I remember buying previously quite a few years ago when we went to see 2 properties. There was one that we thought ticked every single box and was almost like a shoe-in that we'd go and see this and make an offer because we've been waiting for it to come on the market. And another one which was, well, we may as well go and look at it because it was a bit interesting, a bit quirky. We just went to see that one because first one, walked in, ticked all the boxes, walked out and said, don't like it. The other one we bought.
I think that's a similar thing to what my parents did. I remember on one of the viewings that we did before my parents then bought the one that we're living in now. We've been there since 2006, so we've been there a fair old while. And we went to see a bungalow, and my mum and dad just wanted to go and view it because they then turned it into a game for me and my brother and sister, who, trying to entertain the children whilst on a house viewing. My dad said to me in the car, right, when you go in, I want you to count how many dragon statues there are. And this bungalow was littered with them. And we came out afterwards, and my parents didn't want to buy it in the slightest. It was purely for the quirk factor of what it had inside. And then afterwards, it was like, my dad was like, right, how many did you guess? Oh, I guessed about 104, Dad. What about you? Oh, well, I only got 55. It was purely just because it was quirky.
Yeah.
They had no interest in buying it, no interest in making an offer. It was just because they just wanted to see what the kids thought of it.
And the trusted friend starts to bring the head into it a bit, but also so does a second viewing. So even if you did both of them on your own, you first time look at it and you think, my heart says I really like this. When you go and look at it a second time, that's when you have that sort of more serious, right, I'm thinking of buying this. I better check the boiler.
Yeah.
Better check how good these carpets are.
I took my mum along on a visit that was a flat in the Atrium in Camberley. And my mum has, obviously lived by herself and whatnot, so she knows the questions to ask. So she came along with me and she asked, right, what's the broadband like? Strength like? What day do the bins go out? Is it a bin per flat or is it a communal bin? What's the ground rent? It was all these questions that obviously I had no idea about asking, but my mum was there reeling them off, and I was obviously then finding out the answers.
It sounds like a good idea would be to send your mum and Jack off to buy the house
yeah, and then tell me afterwards.
Say, we bought it. Here you go.
Well, I think if that was the case, they'd probably find one in the Outer Hebrides in Scotland. So they didn't have to see me weekly.
I think your mum question would be like, he doesn't need a man cave, he needs to grow up a bit.
He just needs to grow up, yeah.
Oh, don't ever do that.
Well, Jack tells me that I don't need a flat, I need a warehouse.
Before it becomes too anecdotal from me and from you, actually, what is there that scares you or worries you or excites? I mean, actually, there's no point talking about what excites you because that's about buying. I think. What is it about the journey that could scare you or intimidate you or worry to actually never do it?
I think it's not necessarily a worry to never do it because it's something I want to do. It's that if I get into a property and I've paid for it, I've moved in, I'm there in my living room eating Ben and Jerry's at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in my flat.
Too much information, by the way.
And then it just hits me, and I hate it, and I want to go home.
Okay,
that's my worry. Is that I get in and I spend 6 months in this flat, and it just hits me that this is my flat. I bought it. It's mine. I'm, doing this, that, and the other, and it just hit, and just something. It's like the realization hits me. I'm like, this is my home now, and it would be a case of I want to go back to mum and dad, because I would be doing it all by myself, and I would be in the flat by myself. It would just be the realization that I can't just get up and move back home because obviously I bought it. I've not rented it.
You've got options there. It's not a nice scenario. It's probably one that people have done, where for whatever reason they just got it wrong. I think one of the don't start me on how long the legal process is in this country, because it's probably the bane of in fact, it is the bane of my life and my job.
Yeah.
One of the advantages of that is it does give you an opportunity to really question and probe what you're doing. It shouldn't take 3 or 4 months, by the way, to suddenly think, actually, this isn't the place for me. It's normally in the first week. So even though you viewed it again, said yes, and you agreed it's usually in that first week where something comes up, or indeed you personally think this just doesn't feel right, I'm withdrawing. So most sales fall through in the first few days. In that scenario, it isn't the end of the world, because as long as you bought well, you might lose some of your costs, but you do still have the opportunity to say, this isn't for me, but I will sell on. As a bit of advice about buying, the properties that we struggle to sell, and any agent will struggle to sell, is when there is one massive factor that most people won't buy it for that reason. And it's often main road, busy country lane. Okay. So somebody's looking, and this is a house as opposed to a flat, but somebody buys in a little hamlet, 20 houses dotted down this lovely road, but it runs along a B road which has got trucks. Yeah. So you're in the middle of nowhere, but you've got vroom vroom trucks. I may as well live in the middle of the town if I'm going to get that. So they're difficult. And top floor flats with no lifts. So if there is a big reason why somebody wouldn't buy that particular flat, and you're the one who would, I'd still question that, because the resale difficult. That doesn't mean you've got to find a place that everybody's going to love, but if you find a place that the majority of people are not going to look at, that makes it difficult to sell it on. And I know you haven't even bought one yet, but that is a factor to take into account.
Absolutely. I don't think I would even consider buying a flat that didn't have a set of lifts. Not because I'm lazy and I don't want to go upstairs, but if I am in a, say something goes really well in my life and I can live in London, for example, that would be my dream. You know, I'm in the next Christopher Nolan film and I can live in London.
Christopher, you're listening, he's plugged that twice.
I am. Yeah. Come on, hit me up, you know. I'm ready. But I think, you know, if I lived on the 12th floor of an apartment block and it had no stairs, it had no lifts, well, I ain't moving in.
No.
There is no way that I'm like, right, I've got to go to Morrison's, but I've got to walk up 17 million flights of stairs to get to my flat front door. It wouldn't work.
What scares you about the actual buying process or viewing process? You talked about the ultimate scare of bought it, got it wrong. Is there anything else within the process that worries you?
Not so much. I think I'm pretty comfortable with viewing because I've been on a fair few viewings by myself. You know, I'm active on Rightmove and I'm seeing what's out there, and I look at Rightmove, Zoopla, and you know the other sites out there. So it's not the worry of booking a viewing and going to a viewing, because I'm quite confident in doing that, and I'm very comfortable with talking to people I don't know. I mean, our first meet was the first time we ever met, and we had a brilliant conversation.
That's what you thought, but anyway, fine.
But no, that element doesn't scare me at all. I am very happy to book my own viewings and do it by myself. Yeah. But, you know, maybe for the second viewing, also if a friend's in the area, I'll be like, can you just tag along with me?
But nothing else to take.
I think the worry is that I would never save enough.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I'm quite bad at buying things.
Okay.
You know, my electric bike being one. I needed that. It's kind of going to be a necessity when I get relocated for work, because I will become a bit of a train commuter and it will help me get to and from stations either end. But yeah, it's just the worry that when I've saved enough and then I see something and it's like, you know, now I've dipped into my savings and I don't have enough. And even if I've then potentially started the ball rolling and I've, you know, said I've got this deposit, and then I go back and I'm like, well, actually that deposit's now half because I'm an idiot.
Only you can control that.
Yeah. That's my worry, is that I can't, that I lose control sometimes. Yeah. And it's not, I'm not out there like tapping left, right and centre, you know, but...
Without sounding like a business geek, all I would say is have an accountability partner. So if you've shoved a certain amount of money to one side, you tell them that's what you've done, and they keep asking you, is that still there? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, sure, it's still there.
So my bit of summary to this, and thank you, by the way, your insight's really good. I hope anybody listening to this, although we've talked, I think it was important to talk about somebody's circumstances rather than me talk to another agent about how do I prepare to buy as a first-time buyer. And I know some of this has been specific to you and anecdotal, but I hope anybody listening in has realised, they're your circumstances, but these are mine. And obviously, if anybody wants to get in touch with me about their own circumstances, I would do that. What I would suggest then, find out what you can spend. Tackle the question about your deposit with your parents and your family, because that is often a conversation that ends up happening 3 or 4 months down the line when you've got a bit of a deposit, you've been looking, you can't quite find what you want, and their deposit bit makes the difference between you actually being able to get a mortgage that is affordable. Because I haven't gone too much to the specifics about mortgages, but in very simple terms, the bigger the deposit you put down, the more mortgage opportunities you get, and the cheaper that money is. It's just a very simple analysis.
Yeah.
So a lot of people start searching, and then mum and dad, aunt, whoever say, actually, we could help you out here. And I know it's a brutal conversation, it's a tough one, but it sounds like you've got a good enough relationship to have that conversation. So,
and I think that them conversations, they have kind of started, and my mum and dad do want to help, and Nan has said, if you do find somewhere that you love, I could potentially give your inheritance early to help it, and
those conversations are worth having if you've got those relationships, then that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So work out what that is. The solicitor choice is easy, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but do it on the same basis as the broker. Somebody who responds pretty quickly, sounds like they know what they're doing, has got a bit of Google review, or somebody you know of, and you think you're going to be able to get on with them. That's important. What I would then say about buying, we all now can buy so many things without having to talk to and touch a human being, and sometimes it's actually quite a good thing not to have to talk to estate agents too often. Says here's one. But what I would say is, if you start to look at a certain area and you're looking at a relatively small patch, you will soon realise the 3 or 4 or 5 agents who are selling the majority of the property in that area, whether they're good, bad or indifferent, and I'm not going to comment on that. Phone them.
Okay.
Phone them, get to know one of the people in that office and say, I know I keep looking at things on Rightmove and Zoopla and what have you, but I, Alex, am looking to buy a flat in Camberley for this much money. I want to buy one.
Yeah.
And they will remember you, because hardly anybody does that anymore. And people come out of the ether as a stranger off Rightmove on a Thursday evening when a flat goes live, and in comes Mr. Smith and Jones and Brown and everybody else. When they get that property on, because the thing to remember is there's usually a week or two between them first knowing about a property and it going live. They've got to do however well they do this, and don't start me on staging of property. It's a completely separate topic. I believe very strongly in presenting whatever property you've got to the very best you can to get the best price. A lot of agents don't do that. They'll do mobile phone shoots in a flat in order to win the instruction, not make the beds, and just shove it online. Good one to buy, by the way, because you won't get the best price for that. So buy from a bad agent and sell through a good one. So sell through me when you come to sell it. But the thing to remember is there is that lead-in time.
Yeah.
And most of the agents you'll be dealing with, you will have 1 or 2 in that office competing with each other. This is another bad thing about agency. Blimey, I could go off topic here so badly. If you've got, just imagine you and I are sat in an estate agent's office as salespeople, waiting for Jack the valuer to bring back a flat. And he says, I've got a new flat to sell. You and I are actually in competition with each other to sell that flat, because you're not going to give me a bit of your commission and vice versa. So, and that doesn't usually work in the vendor's favour, by the way, because instead of between us finding the best buyer, you will swear blind to Jack as the manager or the vendor that you've got the best buyer. And in fact, I might have the best buyer, but they haven't viewed it yet. Separate discussion to have, but make friends with those agents so they think of you when one flat comes in. You'll get preferential treatment, and as long as you turn up, as long as you give them feedback, you will be in their, in old-fashioned terms, their hot box.
Yeah. When
people used to actually have a box of applicants. They don't have that anymore, but you will jump out of this ether of miscellaneous Rightmove and Zoopla names. That would be my last bit of advice.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Adrian, for all the advice and the help.
It's a pleasure.
I'm going to store it away up there. And
I haven't got any flats in Camberley. It's not really my patch.
Damn.
But, you know, but you'll be absolutely fine. There's
I'm
plenty,
sure I'll find
there's plenty to choose from. Thanks everybody for listening into this. If you've got any general questions about first-time buyers, mortgages, moving house, you know where we are. It's been great. We'll catch up again on another podcast special sometime very soon.
Hi everyone, Supergirl here, and I am a super fan of SMJ Media Group. They provide support for local businesses, charities and events, and of course create fun content for all of you. If you enjoy our content and would like to help support us, please go to buymeacoffee.com/SMJ Media Group and buy us a coffee.